We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Wrestling Through the Decades. Tonight we have the decades of the 1970s, and we've got a great group of alums joining Coach Wernsberger and one of our current student athletes, David Campbell. David is a senior 141-pounder from Gilbertsville, Pennsylvania, and we want to welcome him and thank him for joining the call. My name's Todd Newcomb. I want to thank our sponsor, Geisinger. Geisinger has done a tremendous job on the front lines throughout the pandemic for all of our surrounding communities here in Pennsylvania. And as always, they do a great job year in and year out with our student athletes here at Bucknell. So without any further ado, let me introduce our guests, and then I'll turn it over to Coach Wernsberger and David. Our first guest from the class of 1975 is Gene Santoli. Gene was a four-year letter winner for the Bryson. He ranks fourth on the career winning percentage chart after winning 83.1% of his matches for the Bryson. Our next guest from the class of 1976 is Bill Cressler. Bill was a three-year letter winner and the team captain in 1975. Our next guest from the class of 1978 is Bob Bryson. Bob was a three-year letter winner and the team captain in 1976. He was also an East Coast Conference champion at 150 pounds in 1976, as well as an NCAA qualifier that year. Our next guest from the class of 1978 is Tom Scotton. Tom was a three-year letter winner and the team captain in both 1976 and 1977. He owns the season overall winning percentage mark at 96.6% of his matches in 1977 when he was 28-1. He also owns a share of the season dual winning percentage mark at 100% after a 16-0 campaign in 1974. Tom also owns the Bucknell career winning percentage mark after winning 95.2% of his matches while at Bucknell. He ranks 13th in school history with 89 wins and 8th in career pins with 24. He never lost a dual collegiate match during his career. He's a three-time East Coast Conference champion at 134 pounds, a three-time NCAA qualifier. He won the department's Christy Mathewson Award at the Senior Awards Dinner, and Tom was inducted into the Bucknell University Athletics Hall of Fame in 1983. Our next guest from the class of 1980 is Rich Salomone, and Rich was a four-year letter winner for the Bucknell Wrestling program. So, Coach, we've got a great group. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Nuke. Thanks, DC, David Campbell, for being on here, and thanks to you guys for spending part of your evening with us. And all I can say is just to hear Tom, that's all I can think is, wow, just to hear some of those statistics and never losing a dual meet. It's amazing. So there's wrestling tradition at Bucknell. I like to talk to our guys about it every year as far as the tradition that wrestling has that dates back to the 1940s. So I appreciate all you guys have given to the sport and given to Bucknell University. Congratulations on your careers here as wrestlers and what you've been able to do beyond wrestling, life after Bucknell, life after wrestling, which is something we talk about. I don't know about on a daily basis, DC, but on a weekly basis as far as life after wrestling, life after Bucknell. I love this idea of the alumni Zoom. It's really cool. Number one, for our current wrestlers to be able to view this and see you guys and hear from you guys, for our fan base and all our other alumni out there. So I'll start off, Bob. I'll pose this question to you to kick it off with. You know, before we get in and start talking about all the great memories, can you just update us and update the fan base out there and all others alumni on your personal life, where you're at now, career, family, where you live, etc. I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Okay, I left Bucknell. I was an engineer out of Bucknell, and when I had really had two careers in the past here. One was with a company called Harris Corporation, where I started out as an engineer. We were building printing technology, and eventually became a vice president of engineering for them. And then I had an opportunity with a childhood best friend. He and I are actually co-captains of the Easton High School football team. And he invited me back to be a partner, an equity partner in a small firm that made basically insulated boxes for supermarkets to store ice in. And we built that company from 60 people to 600 people, and sold the company about 3 years. We took it public and sold the company, which has enabled a wonderful retirement for me that started about 3 years ago. But I married my college sweetheart from Bucknell. I met her like the third day at a orientation. Billy Cressler might remember Regina Seattle, because every now and then we'd connect, and we would go on to have 2 children, and both of those children have graduated from Bucknell as well. So we're a large Bucknell clan here, and great supporters. And really, I have been blessed with a wonderful life and a wonderful career, a great wife and family.
Great. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. Bill, I'll pose that question to you, just kind of where you're at. Can you update us on where you're living, your career, family? You're muted.
Turn your mute off.
I live in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, which is south central Pennsylvania, between Harrisburg and Gettysburg. And I was a 37-year public servant for the state of Pennsylvania as a lawyer. Retired 3 years ago. And I have been married for 39 years to a high school sweetheart. And we have 2 children, 33 and 31, and a grandchild 5, a granddaughter 5, who had her first day of kindergarten today. She'll soon be coming over for a visit, so I'll get the scoop.
That's awesome. Congratulations to her. That's cool.
Thank you.
Gene, I'll turn it over to you.
I live in New Jersey. I've lived in New Jersey my whole life. I live in Rahway now, which is 35 miles south of where I originally came from, Woodcliff Lake. I'm on my second marriage, 14 years. The first one was 27. I have 3 children from the first one, 2 girls and a boy. They have 8 kids, 1 boy and 7 girls. My oldest daughter is a cop. My son is a gym teacher at Bergen Catholic, and my youngest daughter is she's an entrepreneur. She does biker shows. So they're all doing great. Like for me, I've been an accountant for 40-something years, and for the last 10 years, I've been like a consultant. So I work whenever I feel like it. So my wife is still working. She's supposed to retire in January, and we're supposed to move to North Carolina. But other than that, except for the fact that I have a pacemaker and I got a bad back, everything's great.
That's cool. Thanks, Gene. Appreciate you sharing. Tom.
Okay. I live in New Jersey also. I live about a half an hour where I grew up. I grew up in Bensalem. I'm in South Jersey, where Gene is further north. And I've actually seen Gene over the years. I've also seen Bill and a few other Bucknell alumni. But, and I think you coach too. Both of my boys wrestled in college. And we actually wrestled against some Bucknell students. So I followed wrestling for a number of years. I coached them in the junior program. Then I coached them in high school. Both got to the state finals, and they both wrestled in college. I've been married for 34 years to my high school sweetheart. I started out working in retail management, did that for a number of years, and then I finished up working in the financial service industry, which I still do a little bit. So I'm working pretty much part-time now and keeping busy, doing home remodeling. I still follow wrestling. As I said before, Bill Cressler and I were set to go to Olympic trials in Penn State, which is, an hour from Bucknell. So I see him and a few other Bucknell alumni. But I try to stay involved in wrestling and keep on top of what the Bucknell wrestling program. As I mentioned earlier, Coach had a tremendous recruiting class with 3 state champions out of Pennsylvania. So go be you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. How hard was it coaching your own kids, man? Was that hard? Let me ask you. I just got to ask
you. It's a lot harder than it was for me to wrestle, but
Just because the reason I say that, I have 3 boys. I have a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and a sophomore in high school, and I just find it real. I learned that I'm a really bad coach for my own kids. I don't know, I'm more calm with my Bucknell student athletes, and then my own boys, I just too much emotion, I think.
It is a lot of emotion, coach, but once you've done it, you're like, man, there's nothing like it, boy. You know,
I know.
Win, lose, or draw, it was like, hey, this is it, you know?
I know. I learned a lot just from just coaching my older son where he's at now. So I handle my younger ones a little different. But thanks.
Tom coached a current world competitor.
Yeah, James Green, he wrestled with my youngest son, Tyler, from the age of 6. So from 6 all the way through high school, they both had identical records pretty much, except for Tyler lost in the state finals his senior year, and James won it his senior year. And then James went to Nebraska, and then became number 2 in the world, made 5 world team. But James still keep in touch, So,
yeah, that's
I
great.
don't know if he's got a tough road to make the next Olympic team, but we'll see.
He
and
does.
of course, he's got Russell Burroughs, who wrestled my oldest son. So
yeah, he definitely has a tough road for sure. But he's a little closer to Jersey now. He moved back out to East Coast, or I guess Southeast, where Virginia Tech's at.
Right.
So, all right, Rich, update us on where you're at in your life and just your career and family, etc.
I'm in Bristol, Tennessee. Moved here in '91, so I've been here quite a long time. My daughter has a Southern accent. My son doesn't, but I moved down here originally to join a hospital and a psychology practice there, and then went to private practice. And last 2 years, I've actually been at the Veterans Administration, a local clinic serving vets, and that's been a blast. I've enjoyed that. My wife is a school teacher, and actually, an interesting thing was they had an issue with their wrestling coach, and all of a sudden needed a wrestling coach right at the beginning of the season a few years ago. And so I've always kind of wanted to do that, and I've always found all kinds of excuses that I didn't have enough time, but they asked me to do it, and I did it for 1 year unofficially, and then 2 years as head coach. And I had a blast doing that. It was really busy. It killed my private practice, but I had a ball doing it. So that was a lot of fun. I had 2 state champions too, which is really cool. A girl who was a 3-timer, and a guy that won his senior year is wrestling in college now. Let's see. After I don't really do a lot. I can't really do a lot of wrestling except for teaching others. But I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu about 20 years ago, and that's a blast. And it's a nice transition for a wrestler who there isn't like a lot of wrestling opportunities to do. So that was kind of fun. And what else here? I teach grapplers and jiu-jitsu folks takedowns and technique. And I actually have a video series up on YouTube to kind of help jiu-jitsu type folks. So I've kind of steered my wrestling, I guess, in that direction more recently. And they're real interested in learning takedowns and wrestling.
That's really cool. Thanks, Rich, for sharing that. How you stayed involved in the sport too, and transition into that jiu-jitsu. It's
a blast. Yeah, it's fun.
It's great. All right, hey, Rich, I'll start with you on this one. If you want to take us back to the beginning, just talk about. I know it take you back a little ways, but talk about the recruiting experience and how you end up, choosing to wrestle at Bucknell.
Well, I went to several different colleges that I was looking at, and I kind of narrowed it down fairly early on. And I remember as a high schooler from a small private high school, being in the college environment was like, wow. I mean, just sort of all kinds of opportunities. Going to be a good fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun. So that was it was kind of eye-opening to kind of see what the college world was like before I really had any experience with it. But Bucknell was really neat, and my parents loved it when they loved how it looked, and they loved just sort of the vibe there. They were interested in the academics in particular, and that was real important to them, and that was important to me. The wrestling program with Bob Farrar was the coach at that time, and he did a real good job convincing me that you could that it was a great school to do kind of it all, to have your academics and have a good, enjoyable social life, and have a lot of fun wrestling and accomplish some things in wrestling. So that ended up coming.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. Yeah, it's like the opportunity. I know we talked earlier with some of those guys from the 2000s. They just talked a lot about the opportunity, not just to compete and wrestle, but that life after piece just seemed to really trigger with those guys. Hey, Tom, will you talk about your experience just in why you chose Bucknell and your recruiting experience in general?
Okay. It was pretty easy. I wrestled, as I said, in Ben Salem, and I actually met Coach Farrell at Chris Poffer's wrestling camp in the Poconos. I think a couple of years before, maybe the year before. And then I made an all-star team where we wrestled a Polish exchange team. And Bobby Frere happened to be one of the coaches there. And he recruited me from there. And that's really what brought me to Bucknell.
Good. That'll do it. Thanks. Coach Farrar was a good recruiter.
Oh yeah, he was good. I came up one time with a bunch of guys in that area, and we stayed for the weekend. We had a good time.
Yeah. He twist your arm really hard?
No, not really. I didn't visit that many schools. I went to a couple schools, and again, I met him twice already. He was one of the coaches against when we wrestled against the Polish team, and from Poland, and I felt comfortable.
Yeah, that's what it comes down
Tom,
to.
did he push your head down?
No, he didn't. But I remember at wrestling camp, he was doing this wacky arm bar. I'm like, never saw that before. Yeah, I still remember that. I said, "Whoa, that's an arm bar? That's not what my coach is." But
what's my neck have to do with it?
But he didn't do that until I started to wrestle for him. Okay.
Thanks, Tom, for sharing that. Bill, hey, I'll turn it over to you. Just talk about your experience with choosing Bucknell.
I was recruited by Rich Schumacher, who was the coach before Bob for a couple years. I only applied to two schools, to Bucknell and Pitt, and I chose Bucknell for academic purposes after there was a scholarship offered that made the finances even. So it was mostly of an academic choice, and plus I'm from the country, so it was in the country, and Pittsburgh wasn't. So
yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Gene, you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal. In August of 1970, my father took me on a road trip. We went to Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell, Susquehanna, Delaware, and Gettysburg. I fell in love with Lafayette. I applied early decision. I took so many interviews, I didn't get in. So, unbeknownst to me, Coach Schumacher's family lives in Suffolk, New York, which is right over the line from Bergen County. So, Bergen County's county tournament is in the beginning of the season, not the end. So, I'm in the semifinals of the county tournament, and I'm wrestling a guy 450 pounds, right? And I'm kicking the crap out of him. I get out, I finished like 10-2 or something like that. I sit down, and this guy with the biggest hands I've ever seen in my entire life says, "How would you like to go to Bucknell?" I said, "From your mouth to God's ears," right? Because at this point, Lafayette didn't care, right? So 2 weeks later, I get a letter from the admissions department. "You have been accepted." I didn't even apply. "You've been accepted to Bucknell." Okay? So, the thing for me was, here I am, a big guy, and I'm going to wrestle with a guy that was third in the country every friggin' day. Okay? He's going to kick my ass until I get good enough. All right? So the funny part of it is, I tell my son these stories. My son was third in the state in the 2000. My grandson, who's 9 years old, who's just battled cancer at 2 years old, was a state champion at 8 years old, 1 year before his father. So they're all like now, but grandpa, you know, they call me Nono because I'm Italian, right? So I show them I have an athlete of the week from the newspaper up here, the Bergen Records athlete of the week. So I tell them, look, when you get athlete of the week, that means you're the best athlete in the entire area for a whole week. Now, in my high school, we were the only undefeated wrestling team ever. Okay, we were 13-0, but 7 of the matches came down to me. So every time, you know, every week it was Santoli does this, Santoli does that. So I got a call one Sunday morning to go to the newspaper place, and the guy goes to me, you know, they do a caricature of you, they ask you a question, they said, where are you going to go to school? And I said, I'm going to Bucknell. So the guy straight out said to me, you're that smart? I said, yeah, I'm smart enough to wrestle with a guy that's going to be bigger than me. So it turned out great. I mean, that was one of the, if I could do 4 years over again and again, I would have done those 4 years over and over again.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. That's really cool. Yeah,
And I'd just like to say, Tommy, you graduated in 78?
I did.
Would you redshirt 1 year?
No, I didn't. I came in, you know, in the fall of.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Because Tommy wrestled my senior year.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
You see,
Right. And so I just, in my mind, I said, man, it seems like it was so much longer, man, you know. But yeah, and I will say this personally, I know a lot of wrestlers. I would put Tommy Scotton up against every single one of them.
I buy that, Gene. Absolutely.
I mean, I was lucky. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story. I mean, I hope nobody gets upset with this, but I lost 9 matches in college. 1 match every year in the dual meet. One of them was a slam. The kid wouldn't get up because the coach made him stay down so he could get a win. 2 to guys from Lehigh, and 1 I got pinned at Syracuse when I was a freshman. I lost in the finals of the conference tournament every year. And because in my junior year, they decided that they should get a couple more selections to the national. In my senior year, there were 2 extra selections. I went to the nationals. I lost in the first round. So there are my 9 losses. Okay, 1 dual meet each year, the finals of the conference tournament, and by the way, everybody that I ever wrestled in, that like Schumacher, I wrestled him in a tournament. I wrestled Joel Kislin, who was 3rd in the country, and he was from Hofstra. He beat me twice in the finals. I beat him later. So everybody that I lost to, I beat before, after. But I was just a fat kid having a good time.
Gene, thanks, dude. That's great. Bob, I'll end this question with you.
Well, you know, I'm an Easton wrestler, and that's where Bobby Ferraro had come from.
Yeah.
And I had wrestled for his best friend, a guy named Chuck Amato, who had a storied career here in Pennsylvania. He was a PA state champ, and he was later actually the head coach of the North Carolina football team. But Chuck had said to Bobby, "Don't miss this Bobby Bryson," and I like Tommy. I'd seen him up in a Pocono Mountain wrestling sports camp where he was there, and Thad Turner was there too at Lehigh, and Thad was recruiting me. My father was a Lehigh graduate. Thad was actually a neighbor of mine here in the Lehigh Valley, and I was looking at Lafayette, I was looking at Lehigh, and I was actually on my way just about to the Naval Academy when Bobby got a hold of me, and he brought me to Bucknell's campus. And I think that at the end of the day, Bobby Ferraro sold me. It was like I would have some kind of family, some kind of a connection there, getting to Bucknell that would look out after me. And I would tell you that that's what he did throughout my time at Bucknell. So it was a lot of Bobby. There was a great tour of the Bucknell campus and a pretty gal and a pretty campus that helped seal the deal. But at the end of the day, it was Coach. It was a connection with my home, and made me comfortable to come and have a great academic and a great wrestling career at Bucknell.
Yeah, it's great. Did you remember a guy at Easton, Joe Bottolieri? It was, you know him? No?
Yeah, yeah.
He's with Bob Ferraro and Chuck Amato and those guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
Joe Bottolieri. That's my father. That's my father-in-law. My father-in-law.
Okay, and those are great. I think, Danny, you've told me that when I visited you at Lehigh.
So I always hear these old Easton stories, you know.
Yeah.
from Bob and Joe Bottolieri and Chuck Amato. It's we got an Easton kid coming next year. He's a rising senior. His name's Isaiah Reinert.
Yes,
and, he was a AAA state place winner this last year, 182 pounder, and he's a rising senior for Easton, and we're excited and pumped up to have some Lehigh Valley and some Easton blood in our lineup again, like we had with Tyler Green a couple years ago.
There's a lot of good blood here in the Valley between Nazareth and Northampton.
We had a heavier weight a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, we had Tyler Green, who was from Easton.
That's right.
Phenomenal job for us. Phenomenal. He was a great kid, and he had an outstanding career. And we're hoping that we can get this Isaiah Reinert going. Lehigh Valley's on the rise again, I think. Easton's on the rise again with their new coach they hired. So it's
right.
Big things happening there. At this point, I'll turn it over to David Campbell, better known as DC. So DC is going to ask each of you guys a question.
These stories are great so far. I'm absolutely loving it. I'll keep the spotlight on you, Mr. Bryson. So far, could you give me or any of my teammates any advice that you had with your experience at your wrestling experience at Bucknell? You're muted.
I was just saying it's a thoughtful question, and I reflect back on my experience at Bucknell, and because of the quality of academic student that you have to recruit, and that these are students and wrestlers with a forward look in their lives that they're building as well as enjoying a great athletic and wrestling experience. It's that I think the challenge for coaches is to put those two things in balance, and at the same time, there's not a depreciation of either one. I mean, I think that Coach Ferraro and Tommy could speak to this too. We were there to win. We were there to pin. There was a mentality that's true in all sports, and it's going to be true for the rest of their life, about committing to be successful, about doing what's needed to accomplish your full potential in your life, whether that's as an athlete or as an individual, your spiritual development, your business development, and so forth. So those things have to have a balance, but while they're in balance, they stand alone and in terms of the commitment to achieve. And so it's really, at the end of the day, it's a mental, spiritual commitment to accomplish. And Coach Ferraro was great at instilling that, whether it was in my academic experience or on the wrestling mat.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. Coach Wernsberger he always is preaching to our team to be 100% committed in everything you do, whether it's like being the best student you could be, the best competitor, or just the best person all around. So I couldn't agree with that more.
You know, I'm on this video and so happy to see Billy Cressler and Tom and Rich, and there is a bonding that is forever with those guys. And even though I haven't seen some of them in, almost 40 years, but it is forever. And I think as a coach, Coach Ferraro, breeded that commitment towards each other, that commitment to be a team, and that plays out in the rest of your life, whether you're on a business team or something else. And it was wonderful. I remember Coach brought, and Tommy, you might remember this, that he worried about that we needed to be able to read faster, and he brought
Sunday nights, right?
Yeah, he brought us, and we had to go to speed reading.
Sunday nights, yeah. So
we could get more time on the wrestling mat, so we can get through the academic experience a little more efficiently.
And we went home that weekend. we had to rush back in to get there Sunday night.
Yeah, exactly.
These,
In order
take a
to
mental
get to
note of
class.
that. We're gonna have to do some speed reading. That make a
Oh,
mental
no.
note. More time in the room.
Yeah.
I love it.
That is great.
Good.
Yes, that was that was great. Hopefully we don't implement speed reading anytime soon, but you never know.
We learned how to look at a whole paragraph
Yeah.
and try to glean. A lot of time in life, it's about getting the 80 for the 20. 100%. If you work at everything to polish it that hard, you're gonna lose a little bit. So he wanted the teacher wanted us to be able to just look at a whole paragraph and somehow walk away with 80% of what was gleaned, and that kind of played out in life at the end of the day.
Yeah, great. Next, let's turn to Bill. Would you have any advice for me, any of my teammates, about the wrestling experience at Bucknell? You're muted, Till.
You're on mute. Can't get off.
Oh, okay.
Want to ask me?
It's unfortunate. Yeah, you're next. That's I can't wait.
Well,
I love all the advice I could get.
All right, so Bobby, I know you're a little bit younger than me, but those two guys, Scotton and Cressler, and me, we won a tournament in Rochester back in 1974.
We did, yeah. My first tournament, yeah.
Yep. But let me tell you something. I one of the things for me was I compartmentalized everything. Like wrestling was this, school was this, social was this. Like I never once did any schoolwork on a weekend. Okay? That was the time to do whatever heck you wanted to do. Okay? Plus, half the time we were wrestling somewhere on the weekend. But I used to make it so that, in the accounting department, seemed like we had 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you had a whole afternoon. What are you going to do before you go to practice or do something? So I was always content to know where I was going to be at what time. But the thing that I say to even my kids and my grandson is that you will never learn anything about life better than being a wrestler. Okay? Because, yeah, you're on a team, but you're out there by yourself. Okay? So as long as you can handle that kind of thing, you're going to be all right. I would venture to say I don't know anybody that I wrestled with in high school or in college that didn't make it. You know what I mean? Like, we all made it, right? And the funny thing is, we could not see somebody for 30 years. And I have a friend of mine, he went to Bloomsburg while I was at Bucknell. And he calls me up and he says, and Roger Sanders was the coach then, right? And him and Coach Ferraro were having some kind of a battle back and forth. So, what's his name? Roger Sanders told Shorty Hitchcock that if they could shut us out, Shorty has to wrestle me. So sure enough, we scored no points against them. So I wrestled Shorty Hitchcock, and the score was 8-8, right? After the match, I'm in the locker room. Shorty comes down and goes, Gino, you got screwed. They gave me 4 points because they didn't want me to lose. He goes, but you got screwed. All right. So anything, here's the thing. Any kind of a situation you have with wrestling people, it always turns out good, in my mind anyhow. I don't know many wrestlers that are bad people. They're not, like all my guys that I know from high school were always trying to give back to the, the people that need help or whatever like that. So all I can say to you is you're already in the right position. You're on a wrestling team. You're in a place where look, in my opinion, there is no better place to be than Bucknell. Mm-hmm. Okay? I'm sure everybody else says the same thing that's been there. Okay? When I was there, you know who else was there? Jim Valvano.
It was. It was.
Right?
It may be.
So one day I walk out of the bottom of the gym there. I'm coming upstairs. He goes, and his basketball team is on the floor. And he goes, listen, if Santoli can hit 1 out of 5 foul shots, you don't have to run your thing, right? So first, now, I'm a pretty good basketball player. I once scored 40 points in a game, all right, at 300 pounds, okay? So I go up there, first one's in. Next day, you got to make 2 now. 2 in a row. Third day, 3 in a row. The fourth day, I said, hey, I'm not going there, right? But, the funny thing was we had such fun. Like the wrestling team and the basketball team, we went to events together, right? Like, I'll never forget we wrestled at Delaware. The basketball team got their asses kicked, right? And on the way back, they all slept in the racks above the seats, right? And at that match, Steve Capelli, who was like a 150-pounder, got his teeth knocked out. So he put the teeth back in. He still got them today, but they got knocked out. Interesting stuff.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Really appreciate that. Thank you. That makes me, that definitely makes me feel better about just the whole situation, knowing that no matter how, life's pretty crazy, but no matter how it works out, I definitely have the benefit of being a wrestler on my side for sure. Next we'll go to Tom. What about you? What kind of advice, anything that really sticks out to you?
Well, I think at Bucknell, along with most universities, there are a lot of distractions.
Yes.
You really have to, you just got to stay away from those distractions. And I always find myself making a plan, but always adjusting the plan. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got to lose 5 pounds. I didn't lose it. Oh, now I got to lose 6 or more. So you're always adjusting that plan, but make sure when you adjust your plan, it's because of your benefit and not because your friend wants you to go hang out or go to a party or something of that sort. But you're going to have to make some adjustments, but commit yourself, make adjustments when you have to. Just don't let your friends, make you a reason, give you a reason for making an adjustment. Because again, it's tough enough. You guys are committed enough. You're working hard. You're cutting weight. You're competing. It's a little bit easier now. I think you guys mostly compete on weekends, but we competed during the week and weekends back then. But so you had one weekend, we had 2 during the week, so it was kind of tough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just stay focused and make very little adjustments.
Thank you. I really appreciated that. I think that's really going to stick to me for sure. For sure. And okay, last but not least, Rich, any advice, anything you really want to share?
I'll just make it brief and stick solely with the wrestling aspect. And actually, this is something that I've kind of learned as I've gotten older and doing the jiu-jitsu thing that I wish I kind of focused on more when I was wrestling. And that is, every practice, you should have some kind of a goal. And I mean, like the teeniest, tiniest tweak of some technique. And it's not like I'm going to learn but I'm going to work on 4 things, but just not even a whole move. Maybe it might be just some subtlety of some position. But I think if you do that and you go into it with a purpose, because a lot of times I think in retrospect in college, I sort of went through the practice. I paid attention to what was going on, but I really didn't have like a goal. I didn't come out there with some accomplishment like, oh, I got this little tweak taken care of today. I think I think people can profit from that because you have so many practices, and if you can just do one little, you'll learn techniques, but if you can, the tiniest thing, like how you hold your 2-on-1 and get your shoulder, just the teeniest, tiniest thing. If you do one thing every practice, that's a hell of an armamentarium by the end of the season.
Yes.
That would be my advice as far as technical stuff in wrestling.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I don't know if it's just like the maturity thing, but as I've been going through the years here, I don't know if I just noticed Coach Wernsberger saying, because he harps that too, is always pick one thing for every practice that you want to get better at. And I don't know if it's just like a maturity thing of having it, like me finally figuring out like, oh, like if I just do this one thing really well every day, it'll start to finally click. I don't know if I just started figuring that out now. Like finally like listening to him, or if it's I definitely think it's holds true. It's very true in that sense. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
David, do you want to give Bill a chance to answer the question since she got back on the call?
Yes. So the question is, what advice would you have for me or any of my teammates as far as the wrestling experience at Bucknell?
I'm going to mirror kind of what Bob kind of said it all, but enjoy the people experience as well as the competitive one. I think that's important. And I would like to add that, I don't ever remember Bob saying anything to me about speed reading, but that's because I had it in high school, and I'm thinking that maybe I told him about that.
All I know, we had to rush back to Bucknell Sunday night to do it.
That's right.
That was after I graduated. I don't know.
Could have been.
Awesome. DC, thanks for that question there to those guys, and that speed reading thing, man. I love it. I want to implement that. Maybe. We'll see. Gene,
I read a lot in retirement. I can tell you that.
And
Evelyn Wood.
Paragraph.
The whole paragraph.
And Gene, I want to hang out with you, dude.
So,
I want to go back to Stripes. I want to say, I want to party with you, cowboy.
We used to have we used to have fun. I mean, you could ask Tommy and Billy. We really had fun wrestling. We had stuff go on. Like we went to Franklin and Marshall one year. We had a what do you call it? We went to a buffet, right?
Oh yeah.
And somebody ate something that he wasn't supposed to eat, But the funny part of it was, I'll never forget this. Coach Farrar says, "How am I going to pay for this?" I said, "I guarantee you, it's paid for. You're not going to have to pay for it." So he goes to me, "How do you know that?" I said, "There's an older Santoli in the room."
Oh, yeah.
My father, forget it. My father would drove to every match whenever he could get the match.
Wow.
Right? He would I'll tell you a funny story. It was a match 5 years later. And in this tournament were two New Jersey state champs from, the late 70s. Chewy and Larry Shacatano. And for the longest time, my father and Larry Shacatano had this thing going about me. Like Larry said, your son's really not that good. And my father would say, "Yeah, he's not that good. He's done this, he's done that, right?" So anyhow, I go in this tournament. I wrestle this guy, Mike Merberg, who was a state champ in Jersey. I pin him in the first period. I wrestled Shuey. I beat him 5-0. And then I beat Shacatano in the final 7-1. My father, I said, I don't even care what the trophy was, but my father went to Shacatano and said, "How bad could you be if my son beat you?" And every summer, while I was in college, I would go to tournaments on the weekend, right? So one year, I went to a tournament in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. So I'm in Clearfield. The entry fee is $5. A friend of mine from New York State's with me, and they said, and the guy comes up to us. He's got a T-shirt on that says "Bonzo's in." He goes, "Listen, I want to get a team, against the fire department had a team, the police department, the school, and everything like that." So I said, "Okay, we'll get you a team, right?" So the first guy to walk up that I knew was Chris Campbell. "Chris, want to wrestle for Bonzo's?" "Why?" "I was going to pay you $5 to be in, so you have to pay you $5. Donnie Rome, the Carr brothers, all right? We had 11 guys on the team. We had 11 guys in the finals, right?
Yeah.
We went to Bonzo's after the tournament. We didn't leave for 7 hours, drinking and eating until 5 o'clock in the morning.
Damn.
That was the way it was all the time. All the guys that you would see I wrestled Taylor in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Taylor, okay? They seeded me fourth so that I would wrestle Taylor in the semifinal. 2 guys that I wrestled from Delaware were seeded second and third, so they didn't have to wrestle Taylor until the last match.
Wow.
So I took the bottom in the second period, and I got out, and I shot a single, and I almost got it. But almost don't count when the guy's 475 pounds. So I got pinned. It was all right. But Chris Taylor became such a good friend. It was like unbelievable. All the people that I know. In 1972, I went to Penn State to wrestle in the qualifier for the Olympics, right? There was only one guy there. His name was Ira Looper, right? He was damn good, man. I lost like 5-1, but it was good. So now I got to go to the Olympic trials in Anoka, Minnesota. 48 guys in my weight class. They came in ninth, which I thought was terrific, right? So when the season, when the regular season opened in 1975, I used to work out a lot at the New York AC because there was nobody who could work out with me. There was no big guys. So they said, look, we want you to wrestle in the Federation Nationals in North Carolina. I said, okay, what the heck, I'll go, right? So I go, and the Sonny Greenbaum, who was the coach, I probably still is the coach of the AC, calls me up. We're in a limo, me and Walter Grote. Walter Grote's like 180 pounds. And Sonny goes, listen, I can't make it, so I got you a replacement coach. I said, who is it? Dan Gable. I said, you think he'd work out with me? Absolutely. He worked out with Taylor, worked out with you, right? So I get there a day early. I work out with Gable. Gable made Ferrara look like a little guy. I mean, Ferrara's hands were so strong, right? But Gable was unbelievable. But we had a great time. I came in third. 100 guys in my weight class. I came in third.
Wow,
it was great.
Man. Thanks,
Gene. Your dad was a big fan. I remember Bobby went out to national. We saw Gene's dad out there.
Great.
He had a friend of his whose son was like maybe he's 8 years younger than me. He was a big kid. So in his junior year, the kid was like 4 and 27. So my father calls me up and he says, listen, you got to go down to your high school and work out with this Carl Geiger. I said, okay. So I worked out with him. I go after work, I went every day. I went to every match, right? He's 26 and 6. He makes it to the States. I mean, he lost the second round. But the whole thing was, as I tell everybody, if you work out with somebody better than you, you're going to get better. You may not think so, but you are. And I'll tell you this, everybody that knows me by one thing. Everything has to do with the underhook. That's it, baby. You use the underhook for the bear hug, for the trip, to the single, everything. So my company is called Underhook Associates. Okay?
I love it.
Everybody's like, when my grandson, who's 9 years old, says, no, you're going to show me that underhook trip? I show it to him. The kid's like, he's a sponge, It's great.
Gene, I got to cut in, man. I got to cut in. Sorry.
No
I got a question that I wanted to address to Bob. All right. So, your most memorable experience as part of the Bucknell Wrestling program. What's your most memorable experience?
Well, I'm going to share this probably with Tommy, but it was quite an experience to be an East Coast Conference champion. Tommy, myself, and Rick Strauss were the first three that went together out to wrestle in the Division I Nationals, and we went out to Tucson, Arizona, and it was an amazing experience. I wrestled the national champion, a guy named Chuck Yegla from Iowa. Dan Gable was in the corner. I have Keith Jackson and Frank Gifford wandering around the mat because Chuck Yegla was the previous national champion. Had a chance to meet Frank, and it just to go through that experience was something that. And Bobby told me after the match. He said, "Bobby, you're going to remember this for the rest of your life." And I would tell you that rings true and has been part of the fabric of who I am and all the wonderful successes that I enjoyed after my wrestling career. So certainly, that probably has to rank number one.
That's really cool. Chuck Yagla, he was a heck of a wrestler, man. He was a legend, or is a legend.
Yep. Just an awesome, tall man, and I was a little bit shorter and thicker. but we talk about grips like Bobby Ferraro had or Dan Gable had. They were like just like iron claws when they grabbed me. I took him down in the first 20 seconds of the match, and that was a mistake because he was so, I don't know that he'd been taken down the whole year. And I had a really good single leg takedown, and I immediately went up on top of him and went into high wrist ride because that's how Coach Ferrero, brought us around. And but this guy had a far face cradle that it was like a 2x4 coming into my face, and he was irritated. And I'll just never forget the experience. But I went on. I had 2 other wins and then a loss. But it was a great time for Tommy and Rick and I to be out there with Coach, and a great tribute to Bucknell in that era.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Tom, talk to us. What's your most memorable experience with Bucknell wrestling?
Well, that was a good one Bob mentioned. Didn't really have a great time at Nationals that year. Did win a match, but best experience, I don't know, it's hard to say. I've had a few. I would say probably when I got the quarterfinals of Nationals my junior year, that was probably one of the best experiences because it was a tough year. Going to 34 all year, it was just a tough year, and getting the National was tough. I mean, I didn't lose a match, but everything was so close. And even the matches I lost at Nationals, it was a good time. I won a close match. I think I won 6-4, my first match. Second match, I won at the buzzer. The guy was taking me down, and he ran out of time, so I won 5-4. Third match, wrestling Big Ten champion. I was down, I think 4-2, and he was 3 times stronger than me. I had no chance of being in that match. No way. I got lucky. He made a mistake, and I got 2 points. But at the end, I had a great high crotch. And I just couldn't get it on. I hit it to the left. He pulled out. From the right, he pulled out. And I just lost that match, And he went on to win the Nationals. But, back then, after you wrestle, now later you got to wrestle again. So, I had a wrestle guy who I had lost to in high school, in order to get in the medal round. And I lost that match. But I would say my this year, we had a pretty good team. We were all pretty close. We wrestled a lot. And Bobby Ferrari, we go up to Easton, we'd always eat at his mother's house. So we had a great time. We get a nice Italian home meal, cooked dinner. So we loved going up to Lafayette or Lehigh, But that was my junior year, probably my best year.
Yeah, you had a great career too, man. Thanks, Tom. Rich, what's your most memorable experience as a Bucknell wrestler?
Well, most of my success came in the freestyle arena, so that was really outside of the Bucknell venue. But in terms of the Bucknell experience, I think the most memorable thing for me was when we go on these trips, and you get in there and kind of scout the place out, maybe look at where the venue was going to be, and then we'd always do something that night. Maybe just like walk around for a while. I mean, Froud would keep fairly close tabs on us, but we could do something together, and that was, I don't know, it was like really special. It was just being able to like be with everybody and connect with everybody, and like in a new town or a new area. I used to love the trips. And actually, as I'm thinking of trips, you don't have an Italian mom that makes spaghetti, do you? I guess for some of you, I guess that were with me, going to Bob Ferraro's mom's house, and have these meals. And I mean, what's special about that was just like hanging out with each other in a relaxed atmosphere, talking, sharing stuff. He'd have a couple of his friends over. I can't remember who his buddy was, who was the educator. He was a teacher somewhere. I'm blocking on his name now, and just like listening to this guy talk, who was like really enthusiastic about teaching and education and all. I mean, those are my special times. I think, particularly just the connection, and that wasn't even so much with the competition, but what we were doing, sort of surrounding the competition. I've got a lot of really good memories with that.
Yeah, I love that because I enjoy those trips and those the camaraderie and the things that we do together, whether it's bus, hotel, the venue. I mean, there's so much fun on those.
Joking at each other, busting on each other. I mean, it was special.
Did Tommy or Billy, were you either one of you guys on the team when we went to Colgate and we slept inside the gym? No? I guess I was a freshman.
I probably was, but I don't recall it, Gene.
Was that a quad? That's a quad, right?
Yep. And we slept in the gym. Remember the
because
the
I had a big snowstorm, right? I think it was a big snowstorm. Yeah, I remember we wrestled like Colgate and like Potsdam and some other school. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was most amazing. And what, at the time, you say to yourself, this was, weird, right? But it was with all your guys, like we didn't really like even go lay down until like 2:00, and we had to wrestle the next day, like 3 matches.
Yeah. We should
have asked me,
around. It was so much snow. We should have turned around.
For me, I will tell you this. The last dual meet, we opened the field house at Lafayette. Okay, now, by now me and Lafayette, we are like oil and water. So, in those days, there was no such thing as a major decision. Okay? I wrestled a guy at Juniata who we couldn't get both his shoulders on the mat at the same time. I beat him 42-6. Right? And the article in the paper said if Bucknell could have had all the points that Santoli got, they would have beat him. Right? But anyhow, so I'm wrestling this kid. I remember his name distinctly. His name was Standish. And after the match, I beat the crap out of him. And I said to him, look, ask your coach why you got your ass kicked. And the kid goes to the coach, and he goes, Coach, he kicked my ass because of you. And he goes, well, you deserve it, first of all, because you couldn't beat him. But he said, you're right. I told him he couldn't wrestle in college. So every time I got to wrestle a Lafayette guy, they were in the conference. I got him every year. I got somebody from there every year. And we wrestled them every year, But that was the thing. For me, there's so many matches, wrestling Shorty and then becoming good friends with Shorty, and he passed away already too, But what a nice guy. I'm telling you, he was one of the nicest guys I ever met.
Yeah, he passed away way too early. Way too early.
Man.
My first major.
Chris Taylor, same thing. I went to the funeral.
Yeah.
In Iowa.
Yeah. What's that, Rich?
Got married 2 years earlier.
My first when I was after the first year, I think it was Hofstra maybe. I can't remember what East Coast Conference was, but after my freshman year, actually Sonny Greenhall was at the ECCs, and I got hooked up with the New York Athletic Club, and it must have been my sophomore year. Then I went to Tbilisi, the Tbilisi tournament in Soviet Georgia, and Shorty Hitchcock was on that trip. I remember, and he is a character.
Oh yeah,
character.
Yeah, that's great. Bill, hey, can you answer that? What just your most memorable experience?
Yeah, whenever Coach Ferrara there got to be coach, he kind of upped the schedule a little bit, added Lehigh, Bloomsburg, Lock Haven. So my junior year, early '75, I recall that we tied Bloomsburg.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, we did.
And that was a great event for the team. Personally, I defeated a guy that ended up being an All-American in one of those topsy-turvy matches that I used to have 12-10. I was on my back. He was on his back.
Yeah.
And that was a sweet revenge because the year before I had gotten pinned by the Bloomsburg kid in 23 seconds. So the result was a little bit better than the year before.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that was a big event for us whenever we tied Bloomsburg, I recall,
Yeah.
for the team.
Well, listen, guys, we're running over time, but we'll end with one more question. I'd like to have DC. I know he has one more question for you guys, and I'll just turn it over and we'll end with this last question.
Perfect. So we'll keep it on Bill. This is more, I guess, of a personal question, but for you guys, what advice would you have for me as far as like networking and finding a job right after Bucknell?
Yeah, I'm not a very good one. I'm a good to start with because it'll be very short because I'm not much of a networker or was involved at the time with networking. But I will tell you that the job that I got and stuck with, the reason I was chosen was because I had graduated from Bucknell as opposed to the other candidates. So that in itself was enough.
Wow, that's impressive. That's cool.
I agree.
You know,
Rich, what about you?
Well, again, that's not being in healthcare and all of that. It works a little bit different, but I guess one suggestion I'd have, and this isn't so much networking, but once you get your foot in the door, people respect wrestlers. People, even though they may not know exactly what you do, they know just based upon like being in high school or whatever, that you got to work hard, you got to set goals, you got to suffer sometimes. And I think business people respect that a lot. And so I think that's important that you can kind of weave that in a little bit to your interview process, because that tells that you got some pluck. I think if you're a wrestler, you can set goals, you can work towards things, and you're going to be you got what it takes mentally to accomplish your goals. So I think I'd always weave that in some way or another.
Great, thank you, Mr. Scotton. What about you? Any advice?
Well, I think that Bucknell has tremendous alumni. I mean, they're everywhere. And I would say that's probably one of your best sources. But if it said, and Bill said, wrestling is also key too, man. You know, because people are going to, wrestlers are a breed apart, man. Once you wrestle, everything else is easy. Okay, so I would start out with the alumni because there's a network, and I've been on some Zoom with some of the Black alumni, and then I found out the new Davis building guy by the name of Frank Davis, a little bit younger than me, but gave the university a ton of money, and he's a Black alumni, and I never knew anything about it until a couple months ago. So, and then that opened up a whole new can of worms, man, because the alumni is tremendous at Bucknell, and they're everywhere. Everywhere.
Tommy, you're Black? Tommy, you're Black? Really?
Yeah, something like that, right?
We did a steam bath together a number of times. Come on now.
But I was just saying, for a Black alumni to give the university $5 million, it's huge. I mean, that's huge. You know, I mean, that to me, that was just unheard of. And when I heard about that and then had a conversation with the gentleman, you know, just kind of opened my eyes that the alumni, regardless of what nationality are, they're everywhere at Bucknell.
You know, I would probably add, you know, because I agree with all what the guys have said here. Somebody like myself that has been well connected to the business community, the Lehigh Valley, and was involved in its economic development and so forth. You know, I'm already on a general alumni networking opportunity that Bucknell has, but maybe I would suggest to coach that, you know, is there an opportunity where Bucknell wrestlers, maybe by geographic region and so forth, could be have a contact, could be available to your graduating and your rising seniors, that if they're interested in manufacturing or healthcare or whatever their discipline is, that they might be able to go to a wrestling specific alumni and say, gee, I'd like to look in the Northeast, and who might I contact there? And because I'll tell you, if a Bucknell wrestler would contact me, I'd be the first one to go to work for him. They certainly had made a difference in my life, and I'd be happy to make a difference in theirs. So maybe there's an opportunity about segmenting the alumni contact list to a wrestling focused list that you can extend to your team as they get ready and prepare to take the next steps after college.
That's amazing that you say that, because when we got off this last one, Matt Colonia called me right up, and he asked that same question, just what you're referring to. How can we get, some of whatever their specific major is, or, whether it's manufacturing or business or engineering, whatever it is, how can I get connected with Bucknell Wrestling alumni?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we will look at for sure, because no doubt you guys would love to help out some Bucknell wrestlers, and then these guys would love the opportunity.
Yep.
So
I hired a lot of athletes, and certainly a lot of wrestlers at all different levels in manufacturing and engineering and product development, and I have contacts throughout the community, and would be happy to help connect these young people.
Thanks for saying that. That's really good.
Thank you. And then Gene, what about you? Do you have any advice for myself or anything? Highlight anything your teammates have said?
Well, mostly these guys mostly would tell you exactly what I would say, but when you put the name Bucknell on your resume, it is like a golden ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. Now, the funny part of it is I haven't ventured far from where I grew up. Okay? So people know me not only as, a wrestler, but a Bucknell wrestler. I went to an interview one time to become an assistant controller in a place, and the guy said to me, he goes, "Look, you think that you could get me a $2 million loan from the federal government, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, I could try," right? So he goes, "All right, I'm going to hire you, but on a now it was a lot of money. It was a couple $100,000 this job." So I went to the federal building in Philadelphia, and one of my fraternity brothers was in charge of the money. I mean, he graduated 5 years before me. But when I went there, it was like, forget it. You got the loan. Don't worry about it. We're going to fill out all the information for you, right? So I would say this. I know everybody that's on this particular Zoom with you. If you needed help, we would all help you, whatever it took, right? And I would do that look, I'll be honest with you. I haven't wrestled for almost 50 years for Bucknell, but man, I check the Bucknell Wrestling's score every time you guys have a meet, or you go to the Midlands, or you do this. Look, I'm a Bucknell wrestler for my life, okay? And anybody else who's a Bucknell wrestler is like my brother. Tommy's my brother, Billy's my brother. All you guys are my brothers, okay? So if you need us and we can help you, don't hesitate to get in touch with us.
Amen. Thanks, Gene. Appreciate that. That's awesome. All you guys are awesome. Nuke?
Yeah, well, thanks, Dan. First of all, let me turn my attention to David. Thanks for taking the time to be on the call tonight, David, and want you to have a great semester, stay healthy and safe, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that you guys are going to be competing come end of the semester into the winter, and we're all hoping for that. So when that does happen, best of luck to you. And thanks so much for getting on the call tonight. This was great. And in addition to that, thank you for what you all have done for Bucknell Wrestling. Not just what you did on the mat, but the way you represented the university and continue to do so today. And for what you do for the current student athletes on our roster. We can't do what we do without the support of our alumni, and you guys have all been great. So I really appreciate everything you do for Bucknell University and the wrestling program. And for those of you at home that tuned in tonight to watch, we thank you for doing that. And go Bison.